It is time to talk about Danielle Smith and the extreme populist politics that have oozed into the Canadian environment. It seems somewhat prophetic that I should be walking around in an extremely smoky Banff this morning. Hi, my name is Patrick. If you've followed many of my videos, of course, I travel the world, but this is home. I'm a proud multi-generational Albertan. I live in Banff National Park. We can barely breathe here at the moment because of the horrendous forest fires. And we are caught into a deeply important, a generationally important election in this province. But I will leave this video up past the election because I think it's important to talk about this leader that we have in this province, Danielle Smith, and what she represents, and even to whatever extent Pierre Poilievre, the federal Conservative leader, represent. Danielle Smith was part of the Wild Rose kind of separatist, populist, extremist movement that drew away any of the former balanced views of the progressive Conservative Party, which was extremely important in this province for decades. She was part of a fringe that then fell in to that really, and I don't want to say right wing anymore, I want to say that crazy populist narrative that seems more tied in with climate change denial, with aligning with this sort of anti-woke thing, whatever the hell that means, and aligning even with Vladimir Putin. Keep in mind, she sided against Ukraine. I mean, this province has one of the highest Ukrainian populations in the Western world. That's just an interesting side note. Do you know that during the pandemic, this is how she found her base to come back into politics after being more or less unceremoniously dumped out of the political sphere in Alberta? Well, she found a space with that tiny percent of extreme fringe people who felt that vaccines were somehow a violation of their rights. And she embraced it. She embraced it in this aggressive manner. She went out to say, at the point at which 75% of Albertans were vaccinated, now it's 92% of Albertans are vaccinated. She aligned the vaccinated with followers of Hitler. I mean, this is how fringe these kind of conversations have become. And then, of course, she's created this whole grandstand story of Alberta sovereignty, whatever the hell that means. And then they even changed the bill to say Alberta, a sovereignty bill within a united Canada. Well, now that our province is on fire, and you know what? Single weather events do not tell us the story of climate. But these events, like massive forest fires around our province, I mean, massive displacement of people, are all part of the climate models that scientists have been sharing with us for decades now. The world is about to hit this ominous 1.5 degree climate change or increase in temperature. And these are the effects that we're going to start living with more and more and more. Wherever one lives in the world, whatever their climate emergencies are going to become more intense. And we're certainly feeling it here. Two years ago, we had the heat dome where we broke every heat record around here. And now here we are in the month of May, and we're covered in dense smoke from massive fires. We need proper, thoughtful, balanced leadership. Rhetoric doesn't help anything. Do you know, recently in the National Parliament, when a member of Parliament stood up to talk about the real crisis that many families in Alberta are going through because of these fires and the displacement that happens, Pierre Poilievre yells out, "Because of your government." I mean, he somehow suggested that the federal Liberal Party started the fires here in Alberta. Like, let's be honest about what this populism actually looks like. I don't want a firebrand, angry leader who aligns himself or herself with whatever extreme causes out there. I want a balanced, thoughtful person. This is one of the most educated, wealthiest jurisdictions in the world. Every time you poll modern Albertans fall right down the middle. A balanced, thoughtful population. Absolutely the underpinning of the economy of this province for the last 5 decades has been the petroleum industry, the oil industry, and for 5 decades we've talked about the need to diversify the economy here in Alberta. All of a sudden, oil prices collapse because of, well, a whole myriad of international changes that we have no control over. And that, of course, blames the opposition, say, look how they destroyed our economy. And then they bring in this United Conservative Party under Jason Kenney, who was unceremoniously dumped out. And the amount of errors that they committed during the pandemic, and of course his cabinet ministers being kicked out because of having drinking parties while the rest of Alberta was locked down. So he's shuffled out, and then the fringe takes hold of Danielle Smith. And I think that's probably true, rather than Danielle Smith taking hold of the fringe. And after 7 rounds of votes, with fewer than 1% of Albertans participating, she becomes leader of this UCP. And her first statement is the most abused people, or the most discriminated against group in her lifetime, were the unvaccinated. That is her statement. And remember, we have a public health care system, and once again, poll after poll after poll supports public health in this province. That's where we are a moderate, middle-of-the-road, intelligent population. So, all of a sudden, even though she didn't support the people of Ukraine, Russia invades Ukraine. What happens as a result of that? Oil prices go through the roof. Suddenly, Alberta feels this massive economic abundance all over again. And the United Conservative Party, good fiscal conservatives, spend like mad. They spend more than the New Democrat government did during a terrible downtime in the economy. We're actually receiving money now into our bank accounts, which is trying to buy our votes. Now, that is their solution, and they've hinged their entire economic plan on the idea that oil prices will keep going up, so they're going to just need more war. Now, a final point that I would like to make about this, that hopefully stays here forever and gets shared, is the fact that we have something called the Heritage Fund in Alberta. Now, the Heritage Fund was a fund set up by Premier Peter Lougheed, someone I think we can all deeply respect. In fact, even though I'm in the national park, just about 16 kilometers south of me here is Kananaskis country. That is 4,000 square kilometers of protected land for the benefit of all Albertans, Canadians, people around the world. And that was a function of this fund, of the royalties off our oil, off this incredible one-off wealth this province has come to enjoy for at least a period of time. Well, the UCP has brought in user fees to that park to try and offset their debt for supporting, basically, Donald Trump's re-election states, which of course didn't happen. So now we pay user fees for our natural environment. Danielle Smith has even hypothesized that we should take back the entrance fees to Banff National Park, even though this is national territory, and she hasn't promised any of the services that we get from those fees. So a side point, but the Heritage Fund has been used for decades now, rather than as a major fund to support major infrastructure. It's been used in regular government spending. So the fund is sitting at somewhere around $22 billion. The equivalent over in Norway, that was started after the fund in Alberta, is sitting at about $1.2, $1.3 trillion. So all of this, so we did have 4 years of NDP, who, not one crisis, and they governed during a very difficult time when there was a collapse in oil prices. So there was a chance, there was a place to do some big capital spending. But otherwise, that Heritage Fund has been whittled away through consecutive conservative governments, and particularly now under this United Conservative Party. So please don't tell me that they are a fiscally balanced party. And please don't tell me that this gentle sort of intolerance, race baiting, anti-vax, and private healthcare is in any way good or healthy for Alberta, Western Canada, or Canada whatsoever. It is not our values, and Danielle Smith is dangerous and extreme, and her buddy Pierre Poilievre up in Ottawa is not offering Canadians at a federal level any alternate opportunity. So thank you for listening, thank you for sharing, and I'll go back to offering tours around the national park, around Canada, and around the world. All the very best.